My grandpa asked in surprise, "Why did you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we gave you for your birthday?" Before I could answer, my mom smiled and said that car belongs to her sister now. My grandpa stayed silent for a moment, deep in thought, and made a decision. I had barely stepped out of the taxi in front of my grandpa's porch when the door swung open, and his voice cut through the cold. "Why did you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we gave you for your birthday?" He asked it slowly, like he was piecing together something that shouldn't be broken. I opened my mouth, ready to explain why a car meant for my work wasn't in my life anymore. But before a single word could find its way out, a voice behind him, too bright, too practiced, answered for me. And in that instant on his doorstep, everything quietly began to unravel. "My name is Pandora, and most days I smell like lacquer and pine because I run a tiny ornament studio out of a rented workspace in Seattle. It's not glamorous. The floor cacks, the heater complains, and glitter follows me home like a loyal dog. But it is mine. Every tiny cabin I paint, every snow globe I seal, every name I letter, by hand, they're the closest thing I've ever had to solid ground. People say I'm patient. They don't see the truth behind it. I'm not patient. I'm careful. I learned early that if you keep your voice low and your hands steady, people leave you alone enough to work. And work has always been the only place I felt like I wasn't in someone's way. My family would describe me differently. My mother, Clarissa, likes to call me the reliable one, which in our house means the person you use until they stop standing. If something breaks, I fix it. If a bill appears, I cover it. If Blair, my younger sister, needs anything, visibility rides ad money for her influencer plans. My mother decides I should contribute. "You're the older sister," she likes to say as if birth order were a contract. Blair is 22, charming, camera ready, and treated like the family's rising star. My mother calls her our front-facing child, which is a strange thing to say unless you've grown comfortable living life like a brand. My father, Rowan, stays quiet in the background. He loves us, I think, but he is allergic to conflict, especially with my mother. When she speaks, he folds. The only person who ever saw me without asking for something was my grandpa Edmund. He's the reason I had a BMW in the first place. Years ago, when my little table at the weekend market grew into a real business, he said, "If you're going to haul your work across the city, you need a car that keeps you safe." He ignored every shiny option on the lot and found a used SUV with a wide trunk and reliable brakes. He handed me the keys like it was the most natural thing in the world. My mother smiled for the photo. Later she said, "We'll keep it in the family," which in her language means the boundaries around what's mine and what's theirs would always stay blurred to their advantage. So when Grandpa asked about the BMW on his porch, confusion in his eyes. Every uncomfortable memory of the past year surged up like a warning. I should have known then that something irreversible was already in motion. Before I could answer, Grandpa, a bright, practiced voice floated out from behind him. My mother's. She stepped into the doorway like she'd been waiting for her cue. "She doesn't have the BMW anymore," she said lightly, smoothing a wrinkle on her blouse. "That car belongs to her sister now." The words dropped into the room like something sharp. I felt myself blink once, twice, as if my brain needed extra time to process what she'd said. Grandpa didn't move. His hand stayed on the doorknob, knuckles white. Behind him I could see the dining room, my family, frozen mid-movement. Blair stood near the table, a ring light still glowing behind her, catching in her eyes like she'd rehearsed the look. Blair lifted her straw and sipped her water. "It's just logistics," she chirped. "I have meetings across town, and well, you barely use it. I mean, you work in a studio. I'm always on the go." My throat tightened. "Mom," I whispered. But the word barely had weight. Clarissa laughed softly. That polite, disarming laugh she uses when she wants to make something ugly sound reasonable. "Sweetheart, you hardly drive. You're always in that workshop of yours. Blair needs to get to Shoot's collaborations. It makes sense." Of course it made sense to her. Everything did when it benefited Blair inside. My thoughts raced. How many times had Blair said she needed the car just for the weekend? How my mother would hand her the keys before I could even answer? How every request I made, from delivering ornaments to markets to picking up supplies, was met with a sigh, a reminder that I could use a rideshare. "It's a business expense," I had told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. I had told myself it was temporary. But somehow the temporary had calcified into their new truth. Grandpa's gaze shifted to me, slow and searching. "Is that true?" he asked. My breath caught on an answer I didn't know how to give. Not because I didn't have one, but because I wasn't used to being asked for my version of events. In our family, my silence had always been the path of least resistance. Blair set her glass down with a soft clink. "Honestly, Pandora, if you'd planned better, this wouldn't even be weird. I'm the one who needs mobility right now." There it was. My sister effortlessly minimizing me without even trying. Something inside me pulled taut. A thin, trembling thread of anger. One I wasn't used to feeling in real time. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet, simmering burn in the center of my chest. Grandpa pressed his lips together. He didn't look at Blair. He didn't look at my mother. His eyes stayed locked on mine, steady, concerned, as if he could feel something shifting in me that the rest of the room was too self-centered to notice. And in that moment, still standing in the doorway, still holding a box of fragile ornaments, against my ribs, I felt the first crack in the version of myself they had built. A version that always gave, always yielded, always softened. For the first time in years, I felt myself harden. My grandpa stayed silent for a moment, deep in thought, so still it unsettled the room. He wasn't a man of dramatic pauses. When he went quiet, it meant every piece of the puzzle had just locked into place in his mind. Clarissa kept her bright smile fixed, but I saw her shoulders tense. Blair shifted her weight, suddenly less certain of her own script. Grandpa finally stepped aside to let me in, but the warmth of the house couldn't touch me. I walked through that dining room like a ghost drifting past its own life. Everyone returned to their seats, as if the moment had been a small misunderstanding. Instead of a boundary being stolen out from under me, dinner moved on around me. I nodded when spoken to. I chewed without tasting. My mother talked about Blair's upcoming opportunities, and my father murmured agreements without ever lifting his eyes. Grandpa watched, only him, driving back from his house that night because Blair had taken the BMW again. I sat in the back of another rideshare, hands clasped tightly in my lap. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears sat behind my ribs like something waiting for permission. When I unlocked my studio, the cold rushed at me. I didn't bother turning on all the lights, only the lamp above my workbench. Its small glow felt honest in a way my family hadn't in years. I sank to the floor, leaning against boxes of unsent orders, breathing in the familiar scent of paint and pine. That's when the first tear slipped, then another, until I wasn't sure whether I was crying for the car or for everything I had quietly carried long before it. I didn't know how long I cried, long enough for the heater to click off, long enough for my hands to go numb. When I finally wiped my face, something subtle had changed inside me. A clean, sharp awareness. I opened my laptop. I pulled up my accounts. At first, the numbers blurred. Then they sharpened into clarity. Payments for family promotion. Bills I didn't authorize. Transfers labeled temporary help. Purchases Blair made while live streaming. Deliveries of packages I never saw. Line after line, month after month, year after year. I added everything twice because I couldn't believe it the first time. Nearly $9,000 money that should have kept my studio stable, money that should have been mine. I sat there in the freezing quiet, the truth ringing in my chest with painful precision. I wasn't unreliable. I wasn't careless. I wasn't failing. I was being drained. Something hardened inside me, a resolve that felt foreign but right, like a backbone I hadn't known I had. I opened a new document and started creating a full record: payments, bills, unauthorized charges, dates, notes, everything. A clean ledger of what had been taken from me under the language of family. When I finished, I saved it and stared at it for a long moment. The numbers didn't lie, and neither would I, not anymore. My phone buzzed. Grandpa's name appeared. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "We need to talk." His tone wasn't worried. It was ready. So was I. Grandpa's house was always warm, even in the coldest months. But the morning I arrived, the air felt different. Quiet, dense, expectant. His truck was already in the driveway. The blinds were open, and when I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was the dining table he did pushed to the center of the room, cleared of everything except 2 thick stacks of papers. One was mine, my record of every payment, every bill, every unauthorized charge I'd compiled. The other I didn't know yet. "Sit," he said gently. I did. He didn't lecture or comfort. He simply opened my folder and read in silence, that same heavy, calculating stillness he'd shown the night before. When he finished, he straightened the pages and said, "This isn't confusion. This is consistent misuse." The word misuse landed with the weight of truth. I didn't need validation, but somehow hearing it from him studied something inside me. He motioned to the second stack. "These are mine documents I've kept for years. Things your mother doesn't know I have." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. "Pandora," he continued, "your family has been treating your work as a shared resource, not your livelihood. Today, that ends. I'll take the lead. You only need to speak the truth." Fear should have risen in me. Confrontation had never been my language, but instead, I felt something almost serene, a calm that came from finally standing in the open after years of hiding in my own silence. At 10 sharp, he said, "They'll all be here." And they were. Clarissa arrived first, wearing perfume too sweet and attention too sharp. Rowan followed his shoulders, curled inward like he wished he could fold himself into the wall. Blair walked in with a phone in her hand, ring light reflections still in her pupils, acting as if this were another content meeting. "What's going on, Dad?" Clarissa asked, dropping her purse onto a chair as though she owned the room. Grandpa didn't answer with words. He simply tapped the table. "Sit." It wasn't a request. They obeyed. I sat across from them, my palms flat against my knees, grounding myself in the wood grain beneath my fingers. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, the documents arranged neatly before him. He began without preamble. Pandora prepared a detailed record of funds taken from her business and personal accounts. "These are payments, real payments she covered for this family. And these," he lifted the corner of my report, "are expenses charged to her without consent." Clarissa's smile came fast, brittle. "Dad, these are misunderstandings. She's always been dramatic about money. Pandora knows we help each other." "No," Grandpa cut sharply. "What you call helping is actually draining her." Blair scoffed. "I never asked her to do anything she didn't want to do. The car, the ads, the supplies, those were investments. Family investments." Grandpa turned his gaze to her, and Blair shrank without meaning to. "Tell me," he asked softly, "did you pay her back?" Even once, Blair's lips parted. No sound followed. Rowan rubbed the back of his neck, words stuck behind his silence. Grandpa continued, voice steady but unyielding. "Pandora lost access to the car I gifted her. She lost money meant for her rent, her materials, her stability. She's been carrying this family's weight alone while the 3 of you called it teamwork." Clarissa's face reened. "Dad, this is inappropriate. We don't need a tribunal. This is family. We share." She never complained. "I didn't complain," I said quietly. "Because every time I tried to set a boundary, you called it selfish. Every time I said I needed the car back, you told me Blair's work was more important. Every time money left my account, you said I was overreacting." Clarissa whipped toward me. "So this is what you're doing, making us look like villains." I kept my voice even. "I didn't have to make anything. You acted." I recorded. Silence slid across the room like a sheet of ice. Grandpa tapped the second stack of documents. "And now I'll make something very clear. Years ago, I saved a fund meant to support the grandchildren building something real. I intended to divide it between you someday. But after witnessing how you've treated Pandora, after seeing how her work, her resources, her independence were treated like communal property, I've reassigned it." Clarissa stiffened. "Dad, it goes to Pandora alone," he said firmly. "It's enough for her to secure a better studio lease and expand her business without ever relying on you again." Blair's jaw dropped. "You're rewarding her for attacking us." "She's not attacking you," Grandpa said. "She's finally telling the truth." Rowan exhaled shakily. "Maybe we can talk about a compromise." "No," I said, quiet but absolute. "There's no compromise on my livelihood." Their eyes snapped to me. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. "I am done funding this household," I continued. I'm done covering for Blair's content for the bills that magically became my problem for the debts disguised as teamwork. If you need help, I'll bring groceries when I can, but my business is mine. My income is mine, and the BMW returns to me today. Clarissa pushed back from the table so quickly her chair screeched. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you, Grandpa stepped between us. His voice didn't rise, but the room obeyed it. Enough. Clarissa froze. You raised her to be reliable. Grandpa said, not disposable. And you treated her reliability like free labor. No one spoke. Not one person defended themselves. Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said the words that had been echoing since the thumbnail moment. And what I do next, Pandora, it's because I'm proud of you. He turned to the family. His decision stood. My boundaries stood. And for the first time, I felt tall in a room that once made me small. The days that followed felt strangely quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on a life that used to hum with tension. I signed a short lease on a bright corner studio in Seattle, a place with big windows, good light, and space enough to breathe without bumping into memories that hurt. Moving in took 3 nights of borrowed handcart and the stubborn determination I didn't know I possessed until everything cracked open. Grandpa visited on the first morning. He didn't bring speeches or advice, just a thermos of tea and a small grin. That said, he'd been waiting years for me to claim something that was mine. He sat on the spare stool while I arranged shelves, occasionally pointing out a crooked frame with the same calm tone he used when teaching me how to measure wood as a kid. Blair came by once unannounced. She walked slowly through the shop, touching ornaments she used to treat like props. When she chose one, a tiny camera with a silver ribbon, she placed the full payment on the counter without asking for a discount or a favor. For a friend, she murmured. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a performance. Just a moment between 2 women trying to figure out who they were without the roles our mother assigned. Clarissa didn't visit. She sent short texts every few days, all sugar and implication. I replied with my shop hours, or a simple, I'm busy today. Polite, boundaried, clear. It was the first time we'd ever spoken on equal ground. At night, when the shop lights dimmed and the street outside softened, I felt something settle in me. Something steady, earned, and unmistakably mine. Peace. The kind that comes only after choosing yourself. I used to think family loyalty meant saying yes until I disappeared. Now I know it simply means showing up with honesty, even when it costs you. Standing in my new studio, surrounded by the quiet hum of a life I built on my own terms, I finally understood something. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose who to let through. If you've ever had to fight for your own space, your own voice, your own worth, tell me where you're listening from. And if this story stayed with you, follow the channel so you don't miss the next.